Welcome back to the Experiential Strategist. I'm Jenny Howard Maxwell. Today, I'm sitting down with someone who spent over 25 years building marketing programs for some of the biggest brands in the world. P&G, American Express, Google, Microsoft, and so many more. But the reason I wanted to have this conversation isn't this extensive brand list. It's that he looked at our industry and saw something that it never had, a real standard for measuring what all of this actually produces. So he and his Emma colleagues built one. Dax Callner is founder and board president of EMMA, the Experiential Marketing Measurement Association, and he's here today to talk about why measurement became his life's work. Dax, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
All right, take me back to the beginning. What were you doing before you made measurement your life's work?
Oh my God. How far back shall I go?
Well, I love Jack Morton. Start with Jack Morton.
I'm gonna go earlier than Jack Morton.
Okay.
And I'm gonna go back to my childhood. I realized one day, I think I was 12 or 13, that I really cared about the truth. And I didn't want to be lied to or deceived anymore. I felt like I had been kind of swindled by people. And I realized I really felt strongly about this. I want to get to truth. And that actually is at the heart of my obsession with measurement. It's not measurement itself, it's what the result is and getting as close as possible to the truth, which I still try to do in everything that I do, measurement and otherwise, and try to be as truthful a person as I can as well, because I really think that's a quality that is useful in life. Anyway, going back to now, past the childhood, I started my career in event marketing, 1999, Santa Monica, California, at a small company called Carabiner, which was soon purchased by Jack Morton. And so I spent then 10 years at Jack Morton worldwide, moving from Santa Monica, then to Austin, Texas, and then ultimately to New York City. Throughout that time, measurement kept coming up. We tried to solve measurement at Jack Morton in the early 2000s, and we did not do a good job. Actually, I look back at it now, and it's obvious why. What we were trying to do was so complicated that there was no way an event person was going to adopt it. You had to be almost like a data scientist. And that's just not actionable. And so we did create something, but it was a huge light bulb moment for me, which was to say, oh, this has to be something people can use. Sounds really obvious, but it has to be something people can use. And it also, by the way, this is another truism for my career. It can't be, look how smart we are. And there's a lot of look how smart we are in the world of strategy that I live in. I'm a strategist in events. And I'm really bored by decks and presentations that are showing off someone saying, look how smart I am. I think being smart is being able to be understood, communicate clearly, and make sure what your strategies are truly useful and actionable. And so I'm not saying that's what Jack Morton did, but there was a little bit of that, like, look how smart we are. And I still see that a lot in measurement. However, through subsequent agencies. So I went on from Jack Morton. I spent some time at Momentum. I spent time at Publicis doing traditional and digital advertising, massively useful when it came to measurement. I then went on to Sparks, where I was the CSO and built the measurement practice at Sparks. Then I went on to GES. I was fired from Sparks. Then I went on to GES, where I also headed up strategy and built a measurement practice at GES. And then I was living in New York City at GES in 2017. And I said to GES, why don't we do something bigger than us for the industry? And they said, let's do it. And I founded EMMA at that point, which is a not-for-profit focused on measurement. But I then moved to England and I left GES in 2018 and ended up at an agency here called Smile for a few years, now on my own with my own agency. Thank God. However, the coalition or the association, EMMA, continues on, and measurement continues to be a big focus of my life as I continue this search for truth.
I absolutely love that you tied in a childhood, I guess, revelation, and you've actually took your childhood revelation and turned it into this amazing nonprofit that's going to help our industry so much. I love
Yeah,
that founding story.
thanks. It's all true. It's more truth.
So, I guess my next question is, when did you actually realize that our industry just didn't have a real standard of measurement? Was it told to you back when you were at Jack Morton and they said, "Oh, we're trying to find it," or did you realize this beforehand?
Yes, it was told to me. I had no freaking clue what measurement even was when the conversation started. I was a burgeoning young, started as a digital strategist at Jack Morton. And then my boss at the time, a woman called Laura Schuler, who some may know, she's been in the industry forever. I think she retired recently. Anyway, she said, we're going to take on this measurement thing. And we brought in another industry luminary who's since retired, Skip Cox. And we started to work out this problem. And it was a revelation for me because I knew nothing about it. And I'm terrible. I was and continue to be terrible at math. And you have to have some understanding of math to get into statistical analysis and data stuff. But I didn't, and I still am terrible at it. I have to have help to figure that stuff out. But it was amazing to me to 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 have this insight uncovered, which is companies are spending lots and lots and lots of money in events, and they don't actually know if it's working. And so it seems insane when you say it that way, but it happens to be true in other channels and advertising as well. It's just that events tend to be more expensive on a per person or per touch point basis. And so events tend to be scrutinized and budgets tend to be cut when it comes to marketing cuts. And so it became very obvious then that measurement was crucial. And I would say that first exposure really opened my eyes, taught me a lot, and opened up this new passion that I didn't even know about before then.
I find that so interesting. My career, I have an MBA in marketing and I came up through the corporate world in marketing, and I never took an event class. There was not a single event strategy,
Right.
anything class. And so it was just, you are now planning events here. You take this on, as the event. I get really frustrated with the structure of the corporate events. Throw it on the HR person, throw it on the office manager, because no wonder we have a measurement problem. Their job is not to measure success of the event. And so, absolutely. But I want to get back to Emma. So Emma became Emma this year. It was EMMC. So
Yeah.
what changed? Did you have a mission change, or what was the point of the change of the name?
I'm gonna continue to tell you the truth and be honest with you, which is I was really sick of saying EMMC. It's just so difficult to say. And also, we aren't really a coalition. It wasn't the right word for what we are. So I suggested to the board, hey, why don't we change our name to something that better suits who we are today? I'll come back to the mission because it did change. Better suits who we are today, and also is something that is easier to say. Like instead of EMMC, I can now say Emma. And my God, it's beautiful, feels delicious in my mouth when I say Emma. And so I'm really happy with the name change. And in fact, weirdly, it kind of sparked all this new energy around the association, just changing the name. It was one of the best things we've ever done as a board is decide, let's change the name. And so so with that, however, it was a nice time to look at what we're trying to do and reflect on what our mission was and what it needed to be moving forward. And we did evolve the mission. It was just the name spurred the mission change versus the other way around. And so with that, the new evolved mission is three things. One, as you said at the beginning, it's a standards body. So we are publishing standards and saying to the industry, here is what the industry should follow, consistent standards of measurement for virtually all types of events that will allow us to have consistency and benchmarks. And I'll come back to that also for the industry. That's number one. Number two is an advocacy organization. So getting out there and speaking, doing podcasts like this, spreading the word, talking about measurement, getting people to realize how critical this is to their business performance, their personal performance. Like there's loads of reasons why measurement is such a useful tool. And then the third is education. And this is the big new one for us. We are preparing to launch. It's now, depending on when you're watching this, it's August 2026. Next month, we are launching the industry's to date most comprehensive training on event measurement, which will include a certification. So if you go through the course, you will get a certification that says, I have gone through this important critical education, and I now have some expertise in event measurement. So it's designed for all marketers at all levels. To start at the beginning, we're going to start with the very basics and go all the way through to the advanced elements of data analysis and reporting so that people come out of feeling empowered and ready to go when it comes to event measurement. So those are the three pillars of our current mission.
Wonderful. So walk me through this certification. So there's 13 modules. And so what would I walk away with if I took this certification?
Yeah. We have 13 modules, and I don't have the document in front of me, but by memory, you're going to start with some of the very fundamentals. So if you're a very experienced marketer, it's going to feel relatively basic in the beginning, but it's useful because it's going to set the foundation for the rest of the course to talk about things like what are the key terms and what are the definitions of those terms. So here's one example. Like we're going to define the terms baseline and benchmark in module 1 of the course. I'm going to tell you, I didn't know what those terms meant until about 5 years ago. And I've been in this business for over 25 years. I just used them without realizing what they meant. And finally, I was like, oh, this is actually what they mean, and I'm going to try and use them accurately. So those types of terms which get thrown around in our industry, getting crisp and clear on those definitions, understanding the basic fundamentals of what goes into a measurement project, and then we do much deeper dives from that point on. We do a deep dive on the process. We do a deep dive on the tools that may be used to collect data. We look at how we do a module just on surveying, because surveying is crucial and there's a lot of really bad surveying happening in the world. We do a module which is a little bit of a left turn on how you persuade stakeholders to invest in measurement, because anyone who believes in measurement has come across people who are resistant to measurement, and how do you overcome common objections. We do a deep dive on data analysis. So you get all this data in. What do you do with it? How do you make it into charts and graphs? What do those charts and graphs look like? How do you compare data points against baselines and benchmarks, which is really important? How do you then take all that information and report it back to stakeholders in a way that's going to actually drive future change? I think for us, when it comes down to why measure, there's only two reasons. One is to provide evidence to argue or defend for why the event was worthwhile, because this is a question people get asked, which is, why did we do this event? Why did we spend all this money? Did the event work? You need data to answer those questions to stakeholders. And then the other reason is to drive continuous improvement. And so with measurement, the idea is you gain insight into what's working, you invest in what's working, and you fix what isn't working. And over time, you see continuous improvement as a result. And that's sort of where the whole course is centered around, is those key areas.
Sounds very comprehensive. And one of the things that I tell my students and I talk about all the time is the fact that we are doing something different. We are going in, someone's trying to hand us a blueprint and go plan this, go do this. Someone that has already set that budget and is saying, go do this. Or as an industry, we have to say, hold the phone for a second, just a second. What are we trying to do here? And we have to actually have the confidence to stop and say, hold on, we're not going to just go execute your little blueprint. We have to use our voices, stick up for ourselves and say, we need to start from the beginning, start tracking, measuring. And it's a totally new way. And you have to have the confidence to do that. And I try to teach my students, you have to be confident in doing this because that's the only way we're going to change the industry.
Yeah. I mean, I would say I've been in this industry a long time, and I think there are generally two personality types of people who are in our industry, and they're both valid. There are people who are superb tacticians and implementers. You give them a brief, you give them a spec, they will do it exactly as you want, on time, on budget, and beautifully executed. You must have that in events in order to deliver a live experience. I mean, that is what events are. They're live experiences. And if anything drops down from an implementation standpoint, it can sully everything. That's one type of person. I am not that person. The other type is the more strategic type mind, or creative types even, which is to say, I want to think about what is the solution we're trying to deliver? What is the right approach to that solution? How do I create the spec that the implementers and tacticians can deliver with excellence? And you need both of those types of people. I am definitely in the second camp and not in the first camp. So I am happy to say, here's a brief, a blueprint, a plan, a playbook. Please, someone execute this to your best ability. And if you need my help to refine or edit as we go, that's cool, but take it, you know? And so I think that going back to your initial point, which is the people who have that strategic mindset should be pushing back to a degree, or at least partnering with the stakeholders in the business, or the client stakeholders, or the clients who really care about what comes out of the event and what success looks like. And what I would say from a measurement standpoint is it allows me as a strategist to elevate the conversation often to different people in the client organization. Like all of a sudden I'm talking to the CMO, or sometimes even the CEO, because those are the people who really want to know, what are the business outcomes? What kind of business change are we driving? And it's nothing against the event people who need to deliver on that, but it's just saying that as a measurement person and as a strategist, it empowers me to have higher level conversations with higher level stakeholders who, like me, aren't as invested in the details of how the event's going to come to life. And so we have this sort of peer-to-peer interaction that makes me as a strategist feel like I'm a real partner to them, because I truly care about what success looks like to them and making sure they're getting the business outcomes that they're hoping for.
So I have found that at the logistics level, there's kind of a ceiling, a cap on how much money you can make in that role. And
Yeah.
so one of my solutions for, you're great at logistics, if you learn strategy, that's what's going to break through that ceiling. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree, actually. However, I don't always think it's about money. You know, it isn't for me. Although you're right that strategy and creative type people tend to get paid more, I guess because we value their brains. I mean, who knows what's going to happen with AI, but that's the way it is, at least as of today. Where AI can't, set up a lighting rig, at least not yet. And I can't set up a lighting rig. But I think your point is right, which is, at least currently, the way the talent ecosystem works is, yes, there is a ceiling to those more logistics or tactical roles. But I also think that there are people who are fantastic logisticians and very trustworthy, who can make a decent living. And it's not always about getting more income. It is about doing work that they love and feel satisfied in doing, and getting paid well enough so that they're not worrying about money all the time. I think that's fine for many people. I mean, some people are motivated purely by money, and it may not be fine for them, but I think it is okay if you're just not interested in strategy to say that's not my game. If you are interested in strategy, you can make the leap from logistics to strategy. I mean, as an example, I started my career at Jack Morton was a digital producer. I was a doer. Uh, but I found that I was really interested in advising the client on what they should do, not asking them what they wanted, which is generally what a producer does. Well, what do you want? I'll deliver it with excellence. I would go back and say, well, you shouldn't do that. And they were like, well, why are you telling me I shouldn't do that? And the reason is because I wasn't a good producer. I was a much better strategist.
I think about a lot because now I'm I'm also 25 years into my career, and the thought of working another trade show floor or setting up another 10 by 20 booth or being the boots on the ground, my body is old. I don't want to be that executor anymore. And so for me, strategy was really, I want to stay in the game. I want to continue to plan and do the events, but I don't want to be, boots on the ground, like working 16 hours to get something set up. And so I
Yeah.
think it's also learning strategy is another way to extend your career.
Yeah, for sure. And especially with someone like you or I who has significant on the ground experience, that means that when we become strategic or strategists, we also have a huge compendium of experience and knowledge to draw from. And when we come up with strategies, we also know what's actually going to work on the ground. And I think in the advertising world, there are planners and strategists who don't have that same direct experience, and they're almost like ivory tower strategists. They'll do all this big, highfalutin thinking, but it's not actually actionable because someone will look at it and be like, "That's a very cool idea, but there's no way we can do it." And I think you and I, because we have direct experience, we know what is actually possible based on budget or location or whatever, client risk tolerance. And then we can then say, here's a strategic plan. And the team can say, yes, we can do this. Like we know what to do with this. And I think that is useful.
I do think that having the experience of posters falling off walls during conferences and
Yeah.
AV just breaking, I think it's so valuable to start on the ground in the field doing that and then becoming a strategist. I talk about that all the time to planners. Plan first, go do the work, and then become the strategist. Because when I was, learning marketing, earning my MBA, finance, all that stuff, I I wouldn't know how to turn that into an event. I wouldn't know how to say, "Oh, this connects to this how." And so, why do you think that it's so important to educate yourself in our space?
In strategy or events, or what do you mean exactly?
Strategy, yes. Your certification, getting educated. I have a
Yeah.
certification. Why is it so important right now in this moment
Mm.
with AI, with all the
Well,
things?
AI, I'll come back to AI, but I mean, a, a strategist like me or you, part of the reason we love it is that you recognize you never stop learning. You have to keep learning. I spend at least an hour every day reading up on what's happening in the industry and making sure my knowledge is continually reinforced. And so, and so after 27 years doing events and measurement, with Emma and the course, I want to give everyone the knowledge that I've been able to capture, not just me, like my colleagues at Emma and me working together to say it's time to democratize access to what has been hidden around measurement knowledge behind the walls of certain brands or certain agencies who have said we're going to keep this close to the vest because it's a competitive differentiator. I do understand that. Believe me, I've worked at many agencies, and we're not giving away trade secrets of individual agencies, but what we are giving away, or at least selling very inexpensively, is what we're giving to people is the most fundamental basic knowledge that they need to then go execute on measurement and to use that strategically for their event programs. Because we know at Emma that if the industry gets better at this, it will save the industry. And if people get better at it, it will help them elevate their careers, elevate their value to employers to potential employers, elevate who they interact with whether they're client or brand side. There's so much usefulness in it that it's too important to withhold, I think. And so that's why we have developed the course and we really want people to take it because we know the value of it. I have loads of examples of talking about measurement to clients. I'll give you one quick story. I did a project with a client and we measured. So the agency I was working at produced the event, did all the content, everything, soup to nuts. I was responsible for helping measure the event, and the results were not good. The results were not very good at all. And that was really scary. And we had a conversation at the agency about how we go back to the client with the results from the event, which were not good, that we were so involved in producing. And we decided to tell them the truth. Let's go back to truth and not sugarcoat it. We really had a conversation. Should we sugarcoat the results? And we decided not to. And then going back to the client and telling them, here's what happened. Here's why we think it didn't work. Here's what we think we should do differently to improve this next time around. That client said, thank you so much for being an honest and candid partner to us. We really appreciate this sense of partnership and shared ownership for our goals and objectives. And they ended up giving us literally 10 more events off of that. They could have said, you guys screwed this up, you're out. But instead, they recognized how powerful the data was and how useful it was going to be as their partner to make the changes needed to improve events next time around. And so that's why I think it's so crucial for people to understand this and use it. And as a strategist, as I've said, to keep learning and recognize you're never a full expert. You're always something else to learn, which is part of what I love about strategy.
That's a great story. I've learned so much from my failures and, failed events that were failed, even though it was a failure based on the valet taking too long, when it's like, no, that's not a failure. That's, a note for next year. And so actually being able to track, measure, and say, hey, this is exactly what it is, that is client retention right there. That is what's going to get them coming back year after year. I had a client call me in January this year, and she had a $500,000 budget last year for this 250-person conference. And she said, well, this year we only have $355,000 to do it with. And I said, why? And she said, I don't know. And I said, that's your first problem right there.
Yeah.
Because if you knew why, then we could fix it. And so that was definitely a teaching moment. And I think that,
Jenny,
go ahead.
you've actually uncovered for what is my magic question, which is why. It's the first thing I will ask when I get a brief. If it's not in the brief, which is, let's say we get in a brief for an event, and the first thing I'll ask is, why are you doing this event? Why? What is the underlying reason for it? Not we want to do an event for 500 people and here's the budget, but why? Tell me why. And if you ask why enough, it's sort of like when your kid asks you, why is the sky blue? If they ask enough, you finally actually have to figure out the answer and tell them the answer. And so why is my secret strategy question, and I will go to why until I get to what is that actually thing that's really going on.
I love that. Your toddler question. Why, Dad? Why?
Exactly.
I have a whole course on that. It's called Purpose to Profit. I beat it into people's heads that before you plan a theme, a venue, anything, you get to the purpose of the event. So you call it why, I call it purpose. So what has changed in the last 2 or 3 years that you feel this is urgent that we start doing this?
I think it's always been urgent. I'll start there. But I think what has changed is there's a lot of scrutiny in marketing as more and more data comes in through other channels. So if I'm a chief marketing officer and I'm looking across my display of channels, go-to-market channels, out of home, digital advertising, social, influencer, TV ads, events, PR, the whole range. I want data against each of those competencies or channels in order to understand if the investment that the company is making is yielding the results that it should. Events are lagging behind those other competencies when it comes to evidencing the impact of what we do. And that is a very risky place to be in. And I am seeing cuts happen. I am seeing CMOs saying, I don't see the value. I'm not seeing the data. I'm going to take all this money and I'm going to put it towards influencer marketing or creator marketing. Maybe because that's a sexy object at the moment, but really it's about them prioritizing where they invest and not seeing evidence to support why events should be on that list. That is happening today. And so if we are going to save our jobs and our careers and our industry, because I think we truly believe that events are powerful, we need to show the stakeholders who control the funds because they're looking at all of their channels and scrutinizing everything. And that is happening more and more and more and facilitated by AI, by the way, where they're looking at AI dashboards, the AI is doing the analysis. I mean, it is the moment to jump on this.
I agree. I actually wrote a blog a couple months ago about how Google Analytics, they have a dashboard. A 13-year-old with a TikTok account can tell you exactly what their marketing is doing,
Yeah.
but the events industry doesn't have a standardized dashboard just like all of them.
Yep. Well, that
And
is
that's
what we're
why,
trying to solve. Yeah.
absolutely. And that's why we are just line items on a marketing budget that can just be moved, is because we don't have that clear evidence. Till now.
Yeah.
Until now.
We're not just line items, we're expensive line items. So, and some CMOs intuitively understand it and get it, and they continue to invest in it. But I think as more generations come up, where people are making data-informed decisions, and that is what we should be making, data-informed decisions, or to use another word, truth-informed decisions. We need to be providing those truths and those data points to help make the decisions the way that they should be made, which is to continue to invest in events, which we know are effective.
Absolutely. So let's get back to your certification. I'm really excited. It sounds like it's very thorough. And who would you say that it's exactly for and maybe who it's not for?
Oh, let's think about this. So I think it is for going back to our conversation around the tactician versus the strategist. I think it's for people who are either want to make that leap from tactical to strategic or people who are already in that strategic mindset. And so I would say if somebody has no interest in strategy, it's not for them. And that's fine. It doesn't have to be for them. However, there are elements of it where even the implementers will need to adopt certain new ways of working in order to support measurement. So one example, like if we're doing surveys, somebody needs to make sure those surveys get to the audience, that they're designed in the right way, that they're delivered on various devices. If we're doing tracking of people's movement through a space, we need the technology solutions to do that. And the implementers and the technologists need to know what those technologies are so that they can deliver it. And that is part of the course. We'll explore those tools and what their use is. But I would say otherwise, it's generally for the strategic people who want to elevate their strategic impact, even if they're at the very beginning of their career, all the way to seasoned professionals who have taken classes, have become certified. But in this particular area, as far as I know, and we did our research, there is nothing this comprehensive in our industry today, which is to really do it and do it properly all the way through from beginning to end. Event measurement tools and practices, approaches, metrics, KPIs, targets, reporting, analytics, the whole everything that can't be done in a 2-hour workshop at one of these industry conferences. And I've taught those. And so you have to invest the time in this. You have to be curious. You have to be inquisitive. The content is videos, but also lots of interactive exercises so you can practice what you do. And then the certification will require some kind of a final, we haven't figured it quite out what it's going to be, a final exam of some kind in order to receive the certification. So again, I think it's for anyone who works in events, who is interested in event strategy, who is leading an event or an event team and recognizes that they have to talk to their stakeholders about what worked, what didn't work, and what we can do better next time around. Those types of conversations need to be informed by credible data.
How long does it take someone to get through it typically?
It's 13 modules, and I think the longest will be about an hour. So probably between 45 minutes to an hour for each of the modules. So an investment of time, up to 13 hours, I would say, over however long they want. That we started off thinking we would do everything live, but that became not scalable and not very manageable. So we're doing on-demand video content, punctuated by these sort of workshop exercises, and then we're going to have some live moments. But essentially, it's an investment of up to 13 hours, as long as they need, because it's all on demand. So you can do it when you have time to do it, rather than requiring them to be at their computer from a certain time and certain day. I think it just works better, especially, Emma is meant to be a global organization. So there's also time zone considerations as well.
Wonderful. Well, I'm definitely interested in taking the course.
Great.
One of the things that I found a couple years ago, I created a software called Planning Diva, and it was a planning tool where vendors could all work together, and there was mood boards. It was just a one-stop shop for everyone to be in there. And what I found when I took it to market was getting event planners to change their way of doing things. Because event planners, we have our own spreadsheets. No one taught us how to plan events. We put it together in our own way. We learned how to do our own run of shows. We learned how to do all of this on our own. And so getting event planners to change their way of doing things is very difficult. So what do you have to say to the event planner that says, well, I don't know if I need this education, I don't know how it's going to help me, and like getting someone to change their ways, I think is going to be the most difficult objection for you.
Yeah. I mean, my answer to that is a couple of different areas. One is we talk about a process of measurement, we have a whole module dedicated to the steps and phases of a measurement project, and we map it against the typical phases of an event project. So hopefully the event planner, you're right, they use different tools, but essentially they follow a planning process of, all right, we need to establish what are we doing? What is the budget? What do we need to get in place in order to make it happen? So there's this planning phase, and it's not just different from measurement. You have a planning phase. So we're trying to show how the typical phases of an event project map to the measurement phases. So you're adding on something into your existing process rather than asking people to change their process. So that's one thing, is we're trying to make it well suited to the way event plans and events happen. And hopefully that resonates with people who have their way of doing things. The second thing I would say is we are in an industry that has all kinds of new things happening all the time. We have new screen technologies, new sound systems, we have new suppliers, new environmental considerations, new audience needs. Like we're not static as an industry. And I think a good event planner is constantly looking at, all right, what do I need to consider? What's new? What's different? How do I evolve my own processes to accommodate, different needs of attendees or different needs from clients? And so I think that's not fair to say people are so stuck in their ways that they're not willing to adapt to new things. And so this is maybe a new thing for people, which is to say it's another arrow in your quiver. It's part of your toolkit. It's going to help you be successful with your clients. Clients are going to be asking for it, and stakeholders are going to be asking for it. So this is the moment to sort of learn how to do it, so that either when they ask, you say, I know how to do that, or you say to them, I'm going to bring measurement into this because it's going to really help us evolve and improve the program over time. And so I think again, we are all adapting to new ways of working all the time. And I think this is another adaptation rather than a revolution.
Well, I'm a great test case here because I was not tracking and measuring success of my events until about 2 years ago.
Hmm.
And so I was planning events for Freshworks, Snowflake, like software companies. I'm planning events and I was just taking the brief, executing it, making it beautiful, making it, wow, this is so great, all the things. But ROI that was not in my vocabulary in the events world. And once I took the time to adopt it, I can tell you it probably takes about an hour on the front end to get everybody aligned with purpose, why, goals, KPIs, and then maybe an hour or two on the end, tracking, measuring, providing the deck, all of that. So you're not really adding a bunch of more work to your plate, which you already have a ton of work when you're planning the event. We're talking a couple of hours and client retention is going to increase, your budgets are going to increase, and your career trajectory is going to skyrocket. That is my testament to learning how to track and prove event success through ROI.
Yes, I agree with everything you said except for ROI. And we can debate that as well, but ROI is not in my vocabulary. And we actually do in the course talk explicitly about how you understand potential revenue impact. But ROI is a tricky one because it's used in many different ways to mean many different things to many different people. And so I'm careful around that particular acronym, but otherwise I'm with you.
Can you go a little deeper into that? So
Yeah.
I teach a lot about ROI and ROE and measuring the difference.
Yeah.
And so I would love a little bit more from you on your thoughts on
Yes.
ROI.
I also don't use ROE. So the only acronym that I use in my own practice, if I use one, is ROO, or return on objectives, which actually feels very useful to me because you have an objective and you want to understand how well did we do against that objective. ROE, maybe you mean return on experience, or I've also
Yeah.
heard of return on emotions. Okay.
I use it both.
So
I use both. Yes.
So return on experience to me, and I don't mean to be insulting, and I'm not, but return on experience is a marketing term because it actually doesn't have a standardized definition in our industry, and therefore it's not useful because I can't tell you what it means, and you probably have what you mean by it, but it isn't what the next person means, and I've heard it across a number of different industry bodies and agencies. And so without standardization, the terms become very difficult. And ROI, I'm a purist when it comes to ROI. ROI is a financial measure. It is the return. How much money did you make? Money. How much money did you make versus the investment? How much did you invest? And the challenge, well, there are multiple challenges. Let me start with the easy challenge that even investment, what an event costs has not been standardized. There's no standard model to measure how much money people spend on events. So that's a gap. That may be something that Emma should look at in the future. But the larger gap is the return. And if we're honest about events, particularly business events or technology conferences like you mentioned, if you are influencing potential purchases, what happens after the event also influences those purchases, and those purchases may not be made for 6 months or a year later. The challenge is the fatal flaw of attribution. And the attribution flaw is to say, if a purchase is made a year from now, can I say it was because of the event? Not honestly, not credibly, not truthfully, because many factors influenced that purchase from the close of the event to when it was actually made a year later. And so that's why I'm very careful not to use ROI, because I'm a purist around what it means from a financial evaluation standpoint. Now, we do have a methodology, which we're going to go into in the course, around how you project potential income, because I do believe events should drive revenue if they're sales events, not for other events. If they're events where you're dealing with customers and prospects, they should drive behavioral change around purchase. But I believe as event people, we can only measure the potential. We can't measure the actual, because oftentimes we lose sight of those people, and the nurturing and the follow-ups happen with sales and marketing teams. But also critically, we can't fairly or honestly attribute a converted sale that happens way later or even a week later necessarily to the event.
I
That's
love
why.
that honest explanation. No, I love the honest explanation. And I do truly believe in ROE. And I talk about emotion a lot because emotion is what triggers a behavior, which is creates the outcome to an event. That's a lot of what I teach. And so for cultural events, leadership retreats, internal events, I think ROE can be tracked and measured. And so we don't have to argue about it, but I definitely like that you have such a strong
Listen,
opinion and an answer to the.
and I'm a big believer in emotion, actually. And in my strategy work and when I do content strategy and creative strategy, I always think about touching hearts and minds. And you have to do both. Actually, you have to get people's intellect and you have to get their hearts, their emotions involved as well. And what I try to do when I do creative strategy for an event is think about what is the emotional journey we want to take people on. What do we want people to feel at certain moments of the event? And if we're able to measure whether or not they felt those things, that's a good way to track whether we delivered on our intent. We have an intent. We want people to feel something here. And did they feel that thing? Now, the connection, or is there a causal relationship between emotional resonance and behavioral change? Not proven. Not proven. If we can prove it, I'm all for it. But I haven't seen any evidence to support that capturing or delivering an emotional response results in a particular behavioral change. And so that's where my scientist comes in and say, if we can prove it with empirical clinical evidence, then I'm in, but I haven't seen it.
You have to read the book by Lisa Feldman Barrett called How Emotions Are Made.
Okay.
Read that book, and it talks about how they're made. And so what I concluded that if emotions are made this way, then you can design events this way. So read that book, and then we're going to have to follow up and come back to
All
this
right.
conversation.
Yeah, I do. Listen, as I said, I really do believe events are designed to create emotional resonance. And I think resonance is the word that I love to use because I think it really speaks to something deeper. I just haven't seen proof that that resonance delivers business results. But I think it does. I believe it does. I just haven't seen the evidence.
Yes, you are a true scientist or data analyst through and through. All right, I want to talk about how if MS succeeds at what you are setting out to do, what does the events industry look like in 5 years that it doesn't look like today?
Great question. Thank you. So we in our standards for the industry, there are three key metrics that we want the industry to adopt. And success for me would be if a significant percentage of the industry adopted these standards. The first one is impact on brand perception. We believe that events should affect how people feel about brands that are putting on the event or involved in the event. And this is a standard metric, and we have a methodology for how to evaluate whether or not we're driving positive change in brand, moving the needle on brand. That's a very fundamental core metric, I believe, for all events. And I think the industry should adopt it for everything, even internal events where employees are coming and we still want them to feel better or great about the brand that they work for, so that it works across just about everything. The second is driving behavioral change, and the metric is around the percentage of people who activate the change that you're hoping to elicit. And the reason it's that broad is because every event may elicit or may target a different behavior. It may be a customer event where you want customers to remain customers. It may be a prospect event where you want people to buy. It may be an employee event where you want people to exhibit a new sales behavior, whatever it may be. But the point is the behavioral change is the metric. What percentage of people are likely to do the thing that you hope they do as a result of the event, direct result of the event? That's the second core metric that we want the industry to adopt. And again, if people would adopt this, it would help. It would feel like a success story for Emma, but also for the industry, because brand and behavior are the critical factors that deliver business results to the companies who are paying for events. The third one isn't as correlated to business impact, but I think is critical to our industry. And it's the perception of value by the attendee. Did they find the event was a good use of their time? And again, we have a standardized metric to evaluate this. And I believe wholeheartedly that if the industry focuses on delivering value to attendees, that the industry will get value as a result. And so when I plan an event, I always think about and talk to the client and team about, why should people care? What are they going to get out of this? What does value look like to them? And we want to evaluate whether all people perceive it of value. All people that you invite perceive it to be of value. And that's the third critical metric that we want the industry to adopt, and that we're putting standards out there for. If adoption of those three things happen and reporting happens, I think we're going to see some real change and real positive investment in the industry, because the CMO types or the business stakeholder and budget leads are going to say, oh, I see. How are we changing peer perception of the brand? How are we moving the needle on people's behavior? And what is the impact we're having on value to the audience? I think those are the critical big three that will help protect and shield our industry from the scrutiny that it's under.
Great answer. I was wondering, if you were to join Emma, say if I wanted to join Emma, is it a membership? Is it, are there other resources besides just the certification?
Yes, there are three different ways to kind of engage with Emma. One is we have a membership, which is intentionally low cost to make sure it's accessible. And people can just come to eventmeasurement.org. That's our website. We got a great URL, eventmeasurement.org, perfect for a not-for-profit measurement association. So you just go there, you sign up, and you get access to playbooks. So actually these very prescriptive, detailed documents that say, here's what to do. Here's the tools that you need. That's the stuff that's informing our education, but that's like the fundamental PDFs, white papers are there and accessible to members. Members also get access to our newsletter, and we have these monthly member forums where we come in and we just kind of geek out around any measurement topic. So you could come with a challenge, a question, and talks amongst your peers. If this is your tribe, which is my tribe, you talks amongst your tribe and get answers and geek out on measurement for an hour once a month. We have these forums. And then we have things like we're at events and we invite members to events and stuff of that nature. So there are benefits to being just a member. The certification is open to non-members. It's a little bit of a different cost model. If you're not a member, it's a little bit more expensive. But certification, you don't have to join to do the certification. It's available to anyone who wants to take the course. And then if they want to become a member while they're registering, that's great, but it's not required. And then the third is we have organizational members who are sort of like sponsors of Emma. That has a different price point and a set of different benefits. But if for a company who wants to align itself with the standards body for measurement in our industry, we've had some great organizations come on board and say, yes, we support this. And if you become an organizational member, it has a couple of individual memberships, free access to the education. We have an advisory board, all kinds of benefits to being a sponsor of Emma. And those are the three key things to get involved with Emma. We also have a very active LinkedIn. So if you don't want to spend any money at all, you could just follow us on LinkedIn, and we're regularly publishing content and blog posts and stuff, putting stuff out into the world.
Wonderful. Well, if someone is really fired up, where should they go first?
Go to our website and either join or decide how you want to get involved. You can always drop me a line. Like I'm regularly talking to people about Emma and measurement, and you could find me on LinkedIn, which is easy enough. I think my email address is also on the event measurement website. And just all are welcome. This is a not-for-profit association truly dedicated to the health of our industry, and we welcome all voices and everyone who's interested. So come on by.
Wonderful. Well, it was so great chatting. I learned so much from you. I am so excited to actually dive in and look at your information because I am such a nerd on this topic. Planning events for 20 years, having them be told to me that they weren't successful over burnt sweet potatoes, no more. So thank you
Yeah,
so much for being here.
my pleasure.